Hello and welcome to the Play Review with me, Douglas Schatz.
And me, Jodi Rylett.
Hi, Jodi.
Hi, Douglas. Nice to see you.
And you. So I've been to theater quite a lot recently. How about you?
I have also been quite a lot recently, and yet there seems to be endless amounts of stuff I yet still want to see.
Yeah, it's great. Bumper season.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
So today we're reviewing The Years, which first ran last summer at the Almeida and garnered superlative reviews, being chosen as a favorite show of 2024 by many. I was very unhappy to have missed it at the Almeida, so I'm very glad that the production is now transferred to the Harold Pinter Theater in the West End with, I think, its original cast. The show is adapted and directed by Eline Arbo, who is currently the artistic director at the Internationaal Theater in Amsterdam. And in fact, she first produced the show in 2022 in The Hague in the Netherlands. And this English stage version has been created with the head of programming and literary at the Almeida, Stephanie Bain. While I'm listing credits, the most important one is that The Years is a stage adaptation of the book of the same name by the French Nobel Prize-winning author Annie Ernaux. The Years is both a very personal memoir of a single woman's life and a snapshot social history as she lives through the past 80 years in Europe since the Second World War. So, Jodi, I don't know whether you saw the show at the Almeida or more recently, and also don't know if you knew Ernaux's book, but how would you introduce or describe what the theatrical version is?
So I saw it at the Almeida in summer last year. It was a really hot day, and I'm booked to see it again at the Pinter in a couple of weeks' time. How I would describe it is a series of almost dreamlike snapshots of one woman's life from about age 6 right the way through to later life. And it shows all of these formative moments. And each woman plays the same Annie, but at different stages in her life.
Yeah, there are 5 actresses here in the cast.
Yeah, 5 actresses, and each takes a lead on they are Annie of that particular age, but then they also play other characters that populate the particular thread of the story that Annie is leading at that time.
Yeah, it's a very distinctive form, isn't it? It's narrated throughout by this revolving sequence of the cast of 5 who represent Annie at various ages and stages of her life, but also, as you say, perform other characters. The staging also is very inventive. I love the theatricality of this, without much in the way of set or effects.
Yeah, very little. If you imagine at the Almeida, it was bare right the way to the wings. The cast members, they are on stage the entire time. And they make no mystery of the fact that they are acting and stepping in and out of the characters. There's a table, there are a few chairs, there are sheets used to phenomenal effect and very moving effect at the end.
The sheets are really important, aren't they? It's a really clever device because what they do is there are snapshots of the different stages of Annie's life, and they're introduced with the cast composing themselves in front of a white sheet in a recreation of a still photograph, so to speak, from that age in her life. And there's lovely moments, the way the cast adopt the postures or the facial expressions required in the photographs as the narrator describes them. And then some of the sheets, as you go through the show, are hung on a wire in a semicircle at the back of the stage. And they're like photos being hung in a darkroom or something. It's like a record of a life.
Oh, that's a nice way to think of it. Yes, it is like a record of a life. And at other points, they fold them up and create a babe in arms each. I mean, incredibly versatile. It's so imaginative. I wasn't familiar with the book. I did ask for it for Christmas. And reading it, I'm even more astonished at the ingenuity of people who adapt books like this and create something theatrical from it. This kind of memoir that is essentially without really much form or structure. It is like memory in that memory is a little bit random. The oddest of things, jingles from adverts or whatever, will be vividly in your mind, but other key events you might struggle to quite nail down.
Yes, it's very much a subjective view, a first person sort of view. Although what's fascinating is I noticed in the performance and in the text that she uses the plural we. So she's, in a sense, speaking for women collectively, which is very important thematically. But just sticking with the form of it, one of the other things which was really enjoyable is the music, because she lives through various decades of music, and we get snapshots of popular culture reflected in the music, which is a joy. And the cast play and sing as well.
I mean, they definitely earn their money, don't they? And every talent that they have is on display, and some of it is a little bit raw. I like the fact that some of them were astonishing singers and some of them were not, and that was okay. And I liked with the music from the very early scenes where the family were all sat around as adults, and Annie was a child under the table listening to the adult conversation, reminiscing about the war, etc., that they would burst into song in the manner of how people would at a family gathering, potentially, all the way up to then a fully performed with mics and.
Yeah, it's very impressive. The cast are wonderful. It's very hard to signal anyone out because, of course, they're all playing Annie and they're playing multiple characters as well at different ages, including children or the odd man. Their physicality is really impressive as well. As you said, they're all on the stage the whole show, nearly 2 hours straight through. One of the great physical moments is they have this fantastic scene of an exercise class.
The 1980s aerobics scene, it was so funny.
Yeah, they literally do this aerobics and it's pretty full on. I mean, they're really doing it.
They are, they are. It's electrifying in a way, the energy of it. That's what I felt from it. They're in almost near constant motion. They dance, they recreate the aerobic scene. There's passionate lovemaking. There's the teenage frenzy of, masturbation marathons. I mean, nothing is left to the imagination. It's an incredibly physical piece.
You're right that it's unbelievably honest and open and frank. And most particularly, of course, one of the central things that makes this show so powerful is that it is exclusively and unflinchingly a portrayal of a woman's life.
Yeah.
And I have to say, as a man, I felt privileged to sort of be immersed in this because what we see is solely through a woman's eyes and includes some wonderfully moving, deeply honest, and occasionally very disturbing scenes and insight. So, as you say, we experience what a woman physically feels in a way, enacting sex at every age of her life.
Yeah.
Mostly wanted and joyous, but once not. And most graphically, when Roma Lagare goes through a gruesome aftermath of a backstreet abortion, which was too much for some. I don't know if this happened for you.
Yeah, it did.
The show is often brought to a stop after this scene because someone in the audience has fainted or asked to leave or has overcome, as it did when I saw it. It obviously comes with trigger warnings, I'm sure. It is a hard scene to watch, though I thought as much for the frank power of the words and the performance as for the actual blood, for example, that we see.
Oh, exactly. It's not the visible gore that's on display, which was nothing compared to a lot of Shakespeare's. It's not that. It's a couple of things. It's first of all the language, and secondly, the way that she delivers it. You just feel her pain.
It's a shocking scene and it's very powerfully delivered and felt. And it doesn't hold back in terms of the explicit language with which she describes what's happening.
Yeah.
So, yeah, look out for that. What the play does, of course, through this one life, is also portray a collective experience of women's lives.
Yes.
Through social change through these decades. And it very much feels a bit like a feminist tract of sorts in that respect.
Very much so, yeah. It's a feminist act in a way to put on a play that is literally just telling you about one woman's life. It's not trying to make it any more sensational than it needs to be. There's no drama in the sense of two different people wanting opposing things in the traditional way that a drama would happen. It's just for 2 hours, we saw an unblinking woman's life with all its gore, passion, pain, horror, humor. I've never seen anything like it.
No, as I say, it struck me again and again how little of men there really is in the thing. I mean, occasional characters are played, but it's all filtered through Annie's view of the world and her experience. It's interesting, though, the narrative form. So there are some, but relatively few scenes of interactive dialogue between characters, and they're not really between characters in the normal sense because, of course, the cast are sort of just impersonating the others. And again, it feels filtered through Annie's eyes. And there was a couple moments where it occurred to me that that form means that you miss some of the inherent drama in conventional dialogue and characters' interaction. Did you feel any of that?
Yeah, I definitely did. In fact, when it first started and it became evident that it was going to be told to me, narrated in that way, my first thought was, oh no, I was worried it would be like this because I don't like it. I want to be shown, not told. But that dissipated quite quickly. But yeah, I know there were certain moments where I thought how dramatic that scene would have been to have had that fully acted out. But it would have been then countered to this whole concept of memory, that we create the story of that thing that happened, and it's a mishmash of what actually happened, the kind of wash that we put on it, things that have happened since, stories that other people tell about that same thing.
Yes. I mean, you're right, because not only is this a great piece, I think, of imaginative theater, it's also a play rich in thought-provoking themes, including time passing and memory, and how we seek to define ourselves and our journey as we pass through our lives. And I will definitely go ahead and read not only the play text, but Ernaux's book as a result, I have to say.
Yeah, we didn't talk specifically yet about the actors.
Yeah, so let me just list you who we have here. Anjali Mohindra, who's I think very good as the watchful child, Annie. Harmony Rose Bremner. She has this unbelievable spine-tingling moment where she does vocals to Pink Floyd, which is just
It's astonishing, isn't it?
Romola Gary. She is wonderful. This scene we talked about, she's amazing, but she's also proud and defiant throughout. Gina McKee is brilliant, cheeky and challenging all the time, putting you off guard all the time. She comes at you with something
Oh,
surprising.
yeah.
And then Deborah Findlay, who I love, brings a sort of sense of calm, of wisdom.
Yeah. And Gina McKee's later life discovery, when she has a lover who is married and she's a mistress, that she describes this sort of all-consuming passion, and it's funny in lots of ways and it's moving. Again, I've never seen anything quite like that.
No, it's surprising and bold, isn't it? To talk about sex so graphically and desire at that age, it's brilliant.
Yes. And her heartbreak. My thought was, gosh, that's a really teenage response to a breakup. I mean, at one point she's sort of kicking the furniture and she won't get up for days on end. She is so destroyed.
But it's very good, isn't it, about every age of life, starting from the child who's observing life but doesn't really understand it, and an adolescent tortured by their lack of competence, social loneliness. But that loneliness, again, very poignantly to the later stages of life where Annie finds herself physically frailer, but also perhaps lonely again, children growing up and away and without a partner. It just brings all of that home.
It does. And at one point, she muses when her adult children, these men, come to visit, it's whatever connects us other than DNA. These grown-up sons come to visit, and she says something like, fundamentally, it's just the accumulation of thousands upon thousands upon thousands of hours that you've spent together.
Yeah. Well, they're also very different beings, being men as well, I think.
That's true. Yeah.
You mentioned the end, which is beautifully staged, I thought, with the cast coming together and their faces were being projected onto the assembled album of white sheets hanging above them. And it created a sort of continuum over their several ages and the time of this one life. It was beautifully done, very moving.
I think one piece that I really took away from it was the great care that the actors showed for one another. There was an incredible connection that they had with each other, that when the inevitable disruption occurred and the show stopped, and I think it was deliberate, but they gathered around Romola Gary and they had their arms around each other in that moment so that she was able to come back and be exactly where she was and kick it off again. And sort of that bond amongst them in a way translated to us in the audience as well, which again isn't something I've felt as strongly as I felt in that play. So it really touched me.
Yes, you're right. Of course, they are, in essence, one. They are the one character. And they are making the theater up as they go along with each other, in a sense. So they're supporting each other in that way.
Yes.
And that message is central to the play. She talks in the text, Annie talks about collective consciousness. and that this one woman represents all women in some way. And you're right, you do actually get that sense sitting in the theater.
Yeah.
So there's so many reasons to recommend this. It's really stuck with me. It's images, performances, themes. It's running at the Harold Pinter Theatre until the 19th of April.
Yeah, and there are some cheaper seats if you're prepared to sit in the neck craning seats of the first and second and third rows.
Ah, yes.
There's still some availability at around the £40 mark.
Or at the back of the stalls where you have the overhang of the gallery, but it's not bad.
It's not bad.
Great. Thank you, Jodi. And thanks to everyone for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
We'd love to hear what you think, so please visit theplaypodcast.com to share your comments or email us at plays@theplaypodcast.com. Thanks for listening. See you next time.